All right, next up is the Pittsburgh Pirates. It would be the Angels, but for those of you who are new to this or just weren't paying attention, we are a Seattle Mariners channel, and we're going to end with the AL West. So we skip the Athletics as the worst team in baseball, and we skip over the Angels now as one of the worst teams of baseball. So we go to the Pirates, who are not very good either, but I do think are actually better than the Angels. Played better than the Angels last year, I believe, by record 76 and 86. I don't remember what exactly the Angels finished at. Who cares? But good, give credit to Derek Shelton, one of the more underrated managers, I think. Like any manager, he makes decisions I disagree with, but obviously give credit to the players as well. I don't think anybody predicted this team to win more than 75 games. Now, they only did it by one, but I think a lot of people were thinking this was a 65 to 70 win team. So good for them to outplaying that number by a considerable margin. This rotation is not very good. It's not the worst, but it's not very good. It starts with Mitch Keller. Keller was a former top prospect, and as a prospect guy, I was being made to look quite a fool there for a little bit. It's been nice to see him have success. I want to see sustained success. I want to see a guy who can do this for, instead of 75 innings, I want to see somebody who can show that top of the rotation stuff for 175. I kind of doubt that he can. I would love to have him in the middle of my rotation. Having him as my ace, it's not my favorite. Not my favorite. And, I think that he still has breakout potential, even as a player who's going to turn 28 at the beginning of April. Is that right? Yep, 4.496. I still think there's breakout potential in his right arm. But I also wouldn't be surprised if this is what you get. And what you get is fine for a mid-rotation arm. I would love to see him take that next step forward. Certainly isn't the most talented pitcher in the Pittsburgh system. We'll get to him in a second. But Mitch Keller as your ace, not my favorite. Bailey Falter might be their number two. Definitely not my favorite. And look, there's a bunch of guys here who have similar talent that could reach this mark. I think Falter kind of profiles best as a multi-inning reliever or as that fourth or fifth starter, preferably fifth. I just don't think he has the stuff or the ability to sustain it for 6 to 7 innings that suggests that this is my number two starter. But they're going to give him a shot, and I wish them luck. I wish them luck. You have heard of the Pirates' number three starter as a Seattle Mariner fan, and you're probably a Mariner fan if you're watching this. Marco Gonzalez. I hope he shoves. I really hope he has success. I think he'll be better than he was the last couple of years, partially because I want him to be, partially because I think his command is better than he's shown these last couple of years. As my third starter, I'm not too excited about it, but I am rooting for him hard. I am rooting for him very, very hard. Quinn Priester, I'm not rooting for. I'm not rooting against. A former top 50-ish prospect. Stuff has kind of waned over the last couple of years as a prospect. Got his chance to pitch last year. Should have every opportunity to win a spot in the rotation, in part because they have a couple of guys recovering from Tommy John. JT Brubaker would have certainly been in the rotation if healthy, but isn't expected back until summer. And then Johan Oviedo underwent Tommy John surgery this fall. So you will not see him, barring something unforeseen, until 2025. Still weird to me. 2025 is only a year away. But Priester has a good chance to be a back-end guy, not paying a whole heck of a lot of attention to him this year as a potential contributor, but Pittsburgh will give him a chance, but there are a couple of young arms that you have to keep an eye on here. And then Martin Perez, just a cromulent, to steal a word from The Simpsons, fifth starter. That's what he is. He looked like much more than that for a large portion of 2022, but then he reverted right back, loses his rotation spot. He'll get his good chance in Pittsburgh to make that rotation, but he will have to pitch well because there's a couple of young arms that people really need to pay attention to. One of them, very obviously, Livy Dunn's boyfriend, a.k.a. Paul Skenes, the first overall pick. I'm a little lower on Paul Skenes than the industry, but that's a little bit the opposite of darning with faint praise. It's just people are treating him like he is a special pitching prospect, and he could be. He could be. But I have some concern about the fastball shape. But at the same time, this is a guy with at least a 70 grade fastball, at least a 70 grade slider, who dominated the SEC, which is kind of like dominating high A, you know, and putting up those kind of numbers in that kind of competition, really impressive. I mean, you can't say enough good things about what Skenes did at LSU. And before that, too, when he was at Air Force, there is just so much to like about him. I'm just not willing to call him like a guaranteed ace. There are some people who have him, and they're not guaranteeing it, but there are some people who view him as the next big thing, the next big thing. Not quite there. I think he is a top of the rotation starter if everything works out. And I will not be surprised at all if he makes his debut this year. I'm a little less excited as some others. It is what it is. And then Jared Jones, who I think is an underrated prospect as well, put up kind of shaky numbers in AAA, but really impressed at the lower levels, made a big jump this year. I think he's got a chance to be a solid mid-rotation starter, a number 3 type of guy. Would not be surprised at all if he had success this year. But overall, this rotation's not so great. The bullpen's pretty darn good. David Bednar is one of the better closers in baseball. Colin Holderman, what a terrific name for a setup pitcher, by the way. Holderman, perfect. Aroldis Chapman, I think that's a pretty nice little 7th, 8th, 9th situation, or mix and match 8th and 9th type of thing. David Bednar is going to get the overwhelming majority of saves. Behind him, it's not so great. Names like Ryan Barucki, Jose Hernandez, Josh Fleming, Colin Selby. I mean, they're all talented enough to get the job done. Hunter Stratton, Carmen Ledzinski. You know, it's not the most talented bullpen, but if I was going to name like the strength of the Pittsburgh Pirates, I think it would be this bullpen. Outfield's decent too. We'll get there, but I do think that this bullpen is going to keep them in games. It's not going to be good enough to make them a contender. Catching situation's kind of a mess. It looks like it might be Yasmani Grandal. Andy Rodriguez, I think, would have had a chance to compete for this job if he was healthy. It sounds like Henry Davis is going to be in the outfield. We'll talk about him in a second. There's also Jason DeLay. It's not good. That is a very poor catching situation. Yasmani Grandal would be a really exciting one about 4 years ago, but not so much now. Rowdy Tellez comes in to play first base. Go, big fella. We love our big fellas. We love our big fellas. Flawed baseball player, to say the least, but a solid first baseman. Ji-Hwan Bae, a decent guy. I would prefer him rather than him being my starting second baseman. And no guarantee. Leover Peguero and I think Nick Gonzalez have a chance to compete for that job. You know, it's fine. It's not ideal, but you could do worse. I would put this near the bottom third of second base situations, and I would kind of hope Peguero or Gonzalez can win that job. All due respect to Bae. All due respect to Bae. I sound like a real YouTuber now. He's just profiles better to me as that guy off the bench. That Sam Haggerty profile. That's what I would kind of prefer. Ke'Bryan Hayes. Ke'Bryan Hayes is a weird situation because I think people were way too low on this guy now after being way too high on him after that 2020 stuff. And look, it counted, but no, it didn't. There was a reason to be questionable about this guy's ability to hit for pop. And there still is. Now, he can play defense. Oh, can he play defense all right? I'd be the best defensive third baseman in the National League. It's him or a couple other guys, but I think I would probably rather have him. And he can steal some bases. And I still think he has a swing that's conducive to hitting for a decent average too. That 275, 280 range. If you could give you 20 homers, this would be a really nice player. There's just no guarantee of that. And he's had some health issues as well. But Ke'Bryan Hayes is still only 27 years old. Wouldn't be totally surprised if he had a breakout season, if you don't count 2020 as the breakout season anyway. Talent's there. Got to start hitting for more pop. At shortstop is one of my favorite young players and a guy I think people are forgetting about, Oneil Cruz. You know, misses the overwhelming majority of the season because of his gruesome injury. I mean, I'll take him talent-wise up against anybody. Like, just talking pure talent, there's not many shortstops better. Bobby Witt, some of the bigger names. I can't even think of really bigger names that are way better or even better. Ellie De La Cruz is more talented, but it's not by like this overwhelming majority. Long story short, I think Oneil Cruz, if he can just keep the strikeouts to a minimum, still has a chance to be a superstar. Do not be surprised if he plays at a superstar level this year. Now, missing that whole year hurts. But I am a big believer in Oneil Cruz. The outfield. I kind of talked this outfield up a little bit. I might have been a little too high. Left field, you're probably going to get a rotation of Connor Joe and Andrew McCutchen. I imagine McCutchen's going to get most of his at-bats at the designated hitter position. One of my just absolute favorite all-time players, and going to be a guy who won't make the Hall of Fame, I think, but I would be, if I had the vote, and I never will, but if I had the vote, it'd be awfully tempting because it's hard for me to tell baseball story without him. It's hard for me to tell baseball story without McCutchen. He's just such a fun player, and he was a great player too. Won an MVP. Legitimately was one of the best players in baseball for a good amount of time. He's just not going to get there counting stat-wise, and I get it. Connor Joe, a nice little utility guy, can mash lefties. That's probably going to be your left field rotation. Joshua Palacios maybe gets a chance in there as well. It's not great, but I do like their center fielder an awful lot. Brian Reynolds has just been a favorite for an awful long time. I think those of you who have followed me on Twitter, I can only apologize, but know that I've been a big Brian Reynolds fan since this guy was at Vanderbilt. Had a couple of has rotated seasons a little bit, but I just think the overall package makes him maybe their best player if it's not Oneil Cruz. Somebody, if they made him available, Seattle should just jump on it. And I know they tried. in the offseason last year. It's hard to do because he signed to a friendly contract. The Pirates don't want to completely tank this thing again. So it'd be hard. You'd have to give up something that can help them right now as well. But I am a big Brian Reynolds fan. Jack Sawinski, who will also probably see time in left field and right field and a little bit of center. Love the pop. Just have real doubts about him contributing anywhere else. Needs to be a 3 true outcome type of player. And I know one of the outcomes, he can definitely hit the ball over the fence. I have some doubts about everything else. The player they list as the starting right fielder right now is Henry Davis. So Henry Davis was the first overall pick a couple of years ago. His first taste of Major League action was inconsistent at best, hit .213. I thought he was better than that, like just watching as often as I can. Took some good at-bats. Still a really good athlete, obviously, if he can play in the outfield after playing catcher for most of his amateur life. I don't think he's a star, but I do think he's going to be a solid regular. It sure would be nice if he was a catcher, though. The value goes up considerably if Henry Davis can play catcher. But it sounds like they're going to have him in the outfield. It's worth noting that they do have him listed on the depth chart for catcher and right field, but I think it's pretty obvious at this point that he's going to be playing a lot more in the outfield than behind the plate, if ever. And then, of course, we mentioned designated hitter Andrew McCutchen. The days McCutchen's not DHing, it'll probably be Rowdy Tellez. We love our big, beautiful boys. Can this team compete for a playoff spot? I don't think so. I actually think the NL Central is a little bit improved this year. I think they have a chance to finish in the middle of the division if a lot of things go right. Mainly Mitch Keller pitching at that ace level. That rotation sticking together enough. Marco Gonzalez being like the 2022 version of himself, that would really help them. If you got the 2021 or 2020 version, goodness gracious, you're going to have a lot of things. Bullpen holds together. If Cabrian Hayes is able to put together a breakout season, if Oneil Cruz is able to stay healthy and play to his talent, maybe they're a playoff team, but I would guess that they're closer to a 70 to 75 win team in 2024. And to answer the question, no. They are not better than the Mariners. I don't think they're better at the Mariners at anything. Like the Mariners are just, flawed. But I think the Seattle Mariners have a much better overall roster. What do you think? Do you think the Pirates can surprise in 2024? Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Told myself I was going to tell you to do that at the beginning of the videos, but I forgot about it. Really appreciate the support. Pittsburgh Pirates. Oh, here's one thing that we cannot go without mentioning. Best ballpark in baseball.